That's one of the first things that I learned. I didn't grow up hunting a ton of whitetail public. I hunted waterfowl in public all the time, obviously fishing and that kind of thing. But the deer thing was not something I did a whole lot. And so starting, hunting with KC over the last few years, one of the first things I learned from him was like that, we would go into some of these pieces here in Texas, and it would just be like, I mean, you just get beat up, man, just walking through them. It's greenbrier and cedar elm thicket and, just ash bottoms and just junk trees, for just miles, and you're like, what, how do we, and there's no trails really, like they just kind of wander through that stuff. And I mean, even where they're pinched down here on the stuff that we hunt, it's hard to find trails that are like, you're like, you know what, I'm going to get a lot of deer on this camera if I hang it here or whatever. So, we have to be like super observant here in Texas. And I think that finding those, like you said, soft edges when you're aerial scouting or just being there, a lot of times you can see it without when you're on the ground versus in the air, which in my experience, if you can see it in an aerial, so can anybody else. And so, it needs to be pretty discreet probably for there not to be a stand hanging there when you get there, at least in Texas. So that's what we look for.
I think you'll see that's different in Iowa, at least from my perspective, that, the ground that I've run around on, if you look at the aerial photography and you see a spot that would be just banging if it was private land, that corner of the field or the pinch point between two fields, I'll walk in there and there'll be a stand every freaking time. Mm-hmm. But if I back off and I start finding some sign in the cover and some staging area looking stuff or side hill trails, I don't find nearly the evidence. I'm sure guys are walking in there with climbers or whatever, I'm sure they're getting hunted to some extent, but I think if you dig into the cover down there, you can have some deer to yourself. So the plan down in Iowa then is you guys went up there, you shed hunted. Did you find any sheds?
We found 0 sheds. We found one deadhead that was right by the road where we found all that sign. It was like a really good looking young buck, but he's not getting any better. So
no, he's topped out. I'm not surprised at all that you didn't find any shed antlers down there. I've never found an antler down there. Turkey hunting, scouting. I think they get picked over pretty good.
Yeah.
But you don't need to find antlers to go kill one in November. Is that when you're going to go down there in November?
Man, I've been thinking about that a lot too, and I kind of wanted to pick your brain on that. I have a very flexible schedule, I guess you could say. I'm going to be in Kansas with KC. We both got tags there this year. And so, whatever, I want to be there with him whenever he's there, obviously, just because I like that camaraderie, if nothing else. But I think usually that like November 7th through 12th is like a really good time period in Kansas. Mm-hmm. And so may be there like early November, late October. And then I also thought about early October as well, just because it's so hot down here, and I felt like, if I got a cold front up there, it would be pleasant and not maybe have so many mosquitoes eating me up. So.
Yeah, you might. We had Darren McDougall on a couple weeks ago, and he drew in Iowa too, and we were kind of breaking down his plan. And when you draw Iowa, you got to go in November. You got to be in a tree sometime in November. But yeah. I'm kind of leaning toward the October thing too. I'm not drawing. I didn't draw this year. Obviously, I'm going to draw next year, and I really think I'm going to probably not go opener, which is October 1st, but I think like mid-October when there's a good scrape thing going on and there might not be a ton of people out. I think I'm going to do like 4 days down there. And I'm actually kind of hoping for the opposite. I don't want a cold front. I hope it's 85 degrees because there won't be anybody there. And I got a couple ponds that I found in the timber that they're big enough. They're holding water no matter what. And I'm kind of, and they're all ringed with sign. They're just like staging area, water, food's off in the distance. And so I'm kind of like, it won't be as fun as that traditional rut hunt, but it could be a really good way to run into a big one when there just aren't very many people out.
Yeah. Are you Are you putting cameras on those water holes at all?
No,
Or you won't plan on it or anything?
nope.
So,
I'm not
I
going to run
mean,
cameras down there.
yeah, that's kind of, I don't think I'm going to make it up before the season. So to do anything, pre-scouting or anything. And, that's one thing I guess that you would definitely have expertise on over me is that the water thing is just such a foreign thing to me because here our landscape is probably it is a lot like Iowa, or at least where I've been, with a lot of creek bottoms and stock tanks and that kind of thing. So like I don't really know how to focus on, and our deer densities are a lot less than in Iowa. So like gathering intel to make a pattern and make things make sense to you is pretty difficult here. Whereas you can figure things out the more deer you view and see and have on camera and that thing. So I have trouble like deciphering which water is going to be worth sitting or hunting or hanging a camera over.
Yeah, man, my strategy. So just as an example, the place that I really scouted and I turkey hunted in Iowa this past spring, I marked some really good looking funnels, pinch points, that kind of stuff. But I specifically went out of my way to look at a couple different ponds. One of them I found just by accident. I could hear frogs. And so I walked into the woods and I couldn't see it on aerial photography. And that one is cool. The other ones I could see, and I just I walked around them to look for rubs. Because if I see rubs around a pond that's in the cover, bucks came in there, they watered, they killed some time till dark, and then they went out to the fields. Or vice versa. They came in early, milled around there. So it's sort of a matter of just going in and seeing. Now, I'm going to go to Nebraska this year and hunt their opener on some public land in north central or kind of central Nebraska. And I've got my Onyx it's like waypoints everywhere because there's stock tanks everywhere. And I can find ponds and stock tanks. So the one property I'm going to, I've got like 14 waypoints. So my strategy is go in the day before and walk to as many as I can. I probably won't get to scout all of them. And if there's a bunch of tracks around one of them, it's a stand or a blind goes up and I'll move on to the next. And I'll just mark which wind and the entrance and just go. And I think we overthink that stuff a little too much because if you have water in cover, deer are coming into it. And if you're looking for just like, hey, I would be stoked with a 130, 140 class buck, whatever, there's probably in Iowa, there's probably one of those deer watering if there's 4 water holes on that property you're looking at, there's probably deer watering at one of them of the quality you'd want every day. So it's just, it's sort of a trial and error thing,
Yeah, that's a good little thought there. Cause I actually probably will hunt Nebraska early season this year too. I'm going to be the dove. Like I said earlier, the dove opener here in Texas is a big deal. It's always September 1st. So I will be maybe a few days late there, but, yeah, I definitely am going to try to do the Nebraska thing. I think early season and apparently, as you say, the watering holes is where you need to be, huh?
Well, if you're going to be, I'm going to be there September 1st for the opener, and the average temperature for the region I'm going to be in is 85 degrees. So, and the public that I'm going to be hunting, there are some fields on there. I just think, the dove thing will be open. I think there'll be people on the easy stuff. And I found I turkey hunted there this spring, so it's not like I'm going in totally blind, but I found some water holes kind of in, like these cedar dotted hillsides, like you're talking about, kind of the open Kansas-y looking stuff. And they're going to be tougher to hunt. I'll probably have to sit on the ground, but they're just middle of nowhere bedding areas kind of around there. And it's like the kind of stuff that you have to hike to get to. And I just can't imagine a ton of people going in to sit on when it's 85 degrees in the day.
Yeah. Are you just blowing your wind, wherever obviously sitting on the downwind side of the pool and just letting it blow and hoping that a deer comes from kind of off wind or whatever?
It depends. So you can look at, a lot of them are positioned where there'll be like a wooded hillside leading up to it, or a wooded draw, or a finger, like several fingers leading down to them. Like those tanks tend to be in specific kind of terrain. And so you can kind of predict, okay, the deer are probably going to approach from this way or that way because that's where the cover is.
Yeah.
And so, you might play a crosswind or you might have the wind in your face. It just depends. But that's why I like to look as many as possible because, if you're relying on one water hole and the wind sucks, then what do you do? And so you got to have plan B, C, and it's not, it's not rocket science, man. They're coming to water. You just gotta, or in some cases, you can sit back and watch. So I'll probably, the night before the season, I'll probably pick what I think is my best spot and back off with the spotting scope just to see if I can pick something up going in or out. Cause you never know how they're going to approach. You think they're going to come in from the cover. And I think that because I live in a place with lots of cover. Yeah. And then you get out into that Western looking stuff and they just light out across the landscape. And now it's like, they didn't come from any trees. They were bedded out in a grassy swale. And so if you can watch them, it's awesome. But it's, how much time do you have,
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with the whole concept of like burning an actual hunt or any chance at shooting a deer pretty much to sit and watch something. Like I struggle with that big time. Like I always want to have like, even if it's kind of a passive setup, like I still feel like I'm hunting, or something like that if I'm going to be spending an evening, so I kind of, and it's probably just me being young or whatever, I guess I probably will learn that at some point, but
it's situational. I mean, it's very hard. This goes for all traveling bow hunters. Super hard to sandbag a day to watch where you're like, I know I'm not going to kill, especially like, think if you got 5 days and you sandbag one day, that's 20% of your hunt gone. And what really drove that home for me was hunting North Dakota a lot. Like we've talked about in the Badlands, I almost always have to give up some hunting time to get on the glass to figure out what's going on in the current year. And it was hard for me, but I've killed good bucks out there by saying, listen, today I'm getting up in the morning. I'm going to be there at sunrise. I'm going to watch. Tonight I'm coming back. I'm going to watch. And then I'm hanging a stand and I'm going in. And it's just a discipline thing. And it's a hard thing to do. And it doesn't work in every hunting scenario. But that Nebraska stuff I'm talking about, it'll work. That North Dakota stuff. It just depends where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun, man. I'm definitely no stranger to the open country stuff. So I definitely want to go out there and try it in Nebraska. I think the opportunity to hunt early is a cool thing, and it'll be, during most of October, it'll be hotter than opening day in Nebraska and here in Texas, I'm sure. Yep. So it's and a lot more stale in the woods with mosquitoes flying around, that kind of thing. It's brutal in October here in Texas. So
well, get out and go hunt somewhere else then, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
So have you hunted Nebraska before?
I have never. No, I haven't. I have not hunted Nebraska. And I hadn't really, I hadn't hunted up north much at all. It's been mostly regional here. And one thing that I would say that I love doing is like, my dad calls me Mr. December, so I end up killing deer in December a lot. And so I just love I love that kind of like last minute, just getting it done, had a tag all season. And so I end up usually only having a couple tags a year and just really chasing after particular deer as opposed to kind of maybe a more of your style where you go in for 4 or 5 days and kill a buck and you go to another state and do it. And not that I wouldn't want to do that at all, but it's just what I've done in the last, several 10 or 12 years. And so, but I do love, like, there's something inside of me that kind of hurts when I fill my tag. I'm like, I don't get to hunt anymore, that state or that area or whatever, especially, things that are areas that are sentimental that I've hunted a lot, So that's kind of, I haven't done a whole lot of like anything north of pretty much Kansas. So for deer.
Well, that you'll be in for a treat then, because Nebraska is awesome. The early season stuff it's a different kind of hunting. I mean, coming from Texas, you'll be a little more used to it than a lot of people, but a lot of hunters don't want to go hunt when it's that hot.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna roam around on public land, it's just a good opportunity to get out there when people aren't there. And some of the stuff there, the cool thing about Nebraska is your tag's good for a mule deer or a whitetail. And there's a lot of places where they're mixed together. And that's one thing I'm keeping at least an open mind about is I've got a place to hunt mule deer. It's public, and it's only probably like 45 minutes from where I plan to hunt mostly whitetails on public. And I'm like, man, I could hunt morning. I could drive over, see if I can pick up a mule deer to stalk, and then I can come back and sit. And it sounds heavenly. I don't know if it'll work out that way or not.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be nice if it would. I mean, that's kind of the dream. We actually, we would love to do the mule deer thing. And I've killed one here in Texas, not on public, on a little lease that we had a long time ago. He was just a little forker, but it was such a cool thing, especially at that age. Like, you just had never seen them, really too much. And so other than that, it's been forever. And I think I have 9 points in Colorado for deer. So those are going to be cashed in sometime soon. But I mean, it's something that is kind of northeast Texas is still a long ways from mule deer country usually. So we just hadn't done it a lot.
That one you killed there, did you stalk it?
No, it came into a wheat field. I was just, typical hunting a blind in Texas, and near a river bottom, little wheat field in the bottom there. And he came in, and I was like, I couldn't believe it, and I'd wanted to kill a mule deer all year and hadn't seen any other than just driving around, He came in, so I shot him, and we get a lot of tags here in Texas. Fortunately,
yep.
Just depends on the county where you're going to be able to cash in those tags. So,
yep.
But yeah, man, it's I've hunted. Technically, some of the places in Texas that I've hunted, like I said, are farther away than Kansas. So, it's like hunting another state when you go down to the brush country in South Texas and you're hunting, so close to the Rio that you can almost throw a rock in it, and it's a different deal, and it's a different culture as well, for sure. So
that little mule deer you shot, I love hearing that because I like little mule deer.
Oh yeah.
I don't trophy hunt mule deer. I've killed some decent mule deer, but I don't, like if you see my buddies and I, when we're on a mule deer hunt, that little 2-point, that little forky, he gets stalked every time.
Oh yeah.
Somebody's awesome. Going after him.
Yeah.
In fact, the first time I hunted Oklahoma, in Western Oklahoma, we went down, there was 4 of us, 3 of us were hunting. One of them was just hanging out with us. And there, your tag's good for 6 whitetails down there. And there was this little 2x2 muley that was just so dumb and hung around constantly. And we looked up the regulations about 5,000 times to make sure there wasn't any way we could go after him, but we couldn't. But that's, well, it is what it is. But the spotting and stalking mule deer is so fun. Like especially if you go with little to no standards, if you're like, I just want to stalk bucks, or even does in some situations, it's just generally some of the most enjoyable bow hunting you'll do. Uh-huh. You're just in the game. You got to find one, you got to watch them, try to bet them down, see them going into a spot you can get into. And it is just, I urge anyone who's interested in it to go try it now, because in 10 years, you're not going to be able to do it. The trend that we have going on with the non-resident situation, I don't believe elk and mule deer are going to be within the common man's reach in 10 years.
Really?
And I maybe, but I think we're going to get priced out. We're going to get pushed out. And so it's one of those things. I say this a lot, but like, if you got the inkling to do it and you want to go bow hunt mule deer, don't need a 180 incher. Just go bow hunt mule deer. There are opportunities to do it now that are over the counter or easy draw, and you will have an amazing, fun hunt in a really cool place. Go do it. If you want to do it, go do it now.